Have you ever been on the wrong road? Early in my life, I allowed myself to be involved in things that were not pleasing to God. I grew up in a fishing village, Magdala, on the beautiful Sea of Galilee. My family was Jewish. We worshiped God through all the feasts and the festivals. I was taught about the importance of avoiding excessive living and avoiding sinful behavior. But the allure of wanting more captivated me. There had to be more to life than fishing, following rules. You already know what I did. I started doing things that young Jewish girls shouldn't. At first, it was so much fun. Rebelling against the rules, it was exhilarating until I lost everything. I slipped into darkness. I was no longer Mary from Magdala. Everything was gone. Darkness and evil dominated my thoughts. For years, I was tormented by demons. I longed to be Mary again, but she was gone. My family was gone. My identity was gone. I had no form of meaningful life. I had no friends. Nobody wanted to associate with me. I was completely on my own. Then one day, he found me. He spoke through the darkness. I heard him call my name. He simply said, "Mary." I had an encounter with a man named Jesus who healed me from the demons. I was finally free. I finally felt loved and at peace. My life was forever changed in that moment. I needed to know more about this man, so I began to follow him and serve him. I sat under his teaching with the disciples. I learned everything that I could. I've never heard anyone teach the things that he did. I would love to tell you that following him was full of fun and excitement, but it wasn't. The journey was thrilling, but many days were filled with grief, and I struggled to understand, but it was all meaningful. There were days that I saw him do great and amazing miracles. He healed the blind, fed thousands of people with very little, and he preached among the crowds. But I also saw him when the crowds were gone, exhausted, worn out from the day. I could see the burden that he carried, but he always made time for us. Probably one of the hardest things to understand was why the religious leaders wouldn't accept him or listen to him. You see, the chief priests, the scribes, the elders, they didn't like Jesus. He spoke the truth, and he claimed to be the long-awaited Messiah. The religious leaders liked their laws and their rules, so they were threatened by his claim. They wanted him gone. The last night that we were all together was so special. Jesus spoke of the future. He instructed us on the Holy Spirit and gave us our final instructions. Then one of Jesus' own disciples, Judas, betrayed Jesus with a kiss. I never dreamed he would be betrayed by one of us. The soldiers came. They took my Lord, and it was awful. These men took Jesus to the high priest who questioned him. Others gathered around in support of what was happening. They began to give false testimonies against Jesus. He hadn't hurt anyone. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet they were intent to lie against him. I don't understand why people would do such things. I'm told that Jesus remained quiet. He didn't try to defend himself. What happened next happened so fast. I watched as the people, they spat on my Lord. They pulled the hair out of his beard. I saw them beat him and strip him naked. They were so hateful to him who had done nothing wrong. I stood with Mary, his mother, and I heard her cries, a sound I can never forget. The next day, these men took my Lord to Pilate for further questioning. Pilate could find no fault in him, but under political pressure, Pilate made an offer to the crowd. They could release Jesus or another prisoner named Barabbas. Barabbas was in prison for murder. The people started to yell, "Release Barabbas!" After Barabbas was released, Jesus was received in his place. Then the people began to yell, "Crucify him." Why would they want to kill my Lord? He healed me. He freed me and had done so much for so many others. I looked on as the soldiers took him away. They placed purple linen around his body. They mashed a crown of thorns upon his head. They mocked him and continued to beat him. He was led to Golgotha. He carried his cross as far as he could until he collapsed under the pain and exhaustion. It was there that I witnessed the soldiers drive stakes through his wrists and his feet. He was lifted onto the cross where he hung for hours before he called out to God. And when he did, he asked God to forgive them, for they did not understand what they had done. I watched with my Lord's mother as he gave up his spirit and he took his last breath. My Lord, my deliverer, my healer, my rescuer had been crucified. I was so sad and so very broken. Words cannot describe my despair. But I couldn't leave my Lord. I stayed and I watched from a distance as Joseph took down his body. I watched as Joseph wrapped my Lord's body in burial cloths and laid him in the tomb, sealing the door with a large stone. I wanted to pay my respects, but I couldn't go to the tomb the next day, you see, because it was the Sabbath. But that night, before the sun rose, as soon as the Sabbath ended, I left while it was still dark, and I returned to the tomb. Mary, the mother of James, Salome, they came with me, and we brought spices to anoint his body. We weren't sure how we were going to move the stone away from the door, but it was so important that we did, that we gave him a final burial. When we got to the tomb, the large stone that covered the doorway was rolled away. I was so afraid someone had taken my Lord's body, I ran to tell Peter and John. They came, and they saw that the tomb was empty. The linens that Jesus' body were wrapped in were lying inside. I was so distraught. Who had taken his body? Peter and John returned to their homes, but I couldn't leave him. I had to find him. He had done so much for me. I went inside the tomb to see for myself, and when I went inside, there were 2 angels, clothed in white, sitting inside. They said, "Do not be afraid. You're looking for Jesus of Nazarene. He was crucified, but he is not here. He is risen." He has risen? I remember him teaching about these things, but could it be? I was shaking from fear and astonishment, so many emotions. I turned to leave, and I saw the gardener. I asked him, did he know anything? Did you see where they took the body of my Lord? But then the most amazing thing happened. The gardener looked at me, and he simply said, "Mary." He called me by name, and it was at once that I realized that this was not the gardener, but this was my Lord. It was the same voice that had called my name before and brought me out of the darkness, and now it was true. He was alive, and he had risen. I wanted to cling so tightly to him, not to let him go, but he told me not to touch him. Instead, he said, "Mary, go and tell." Me? Mary Magdalene? But I'm a woman. I have a shameful past. I have no credibility. Nobody would believe me. But my Lord told me to go and tell that he was alive. He wanted me to be the first evangelist of his resurrection. He wanted to use me and his story to spread his gospel in spite of who I was and what I had done. He had fully redeemed me, and now he was including me in his plan. But I was so unworthy. But my Lord said, "Go and tell them, Mary," so I had to go. I ran and I told the disciples what I had seen. At first they didn't believe me. But I continued on, telling everyone of the transformative power of God. I knew for a fact who he was and what he had done for me. And I had to tell everybody. Because if he can save me, if he can change me, if he died on the cross for me, that means that he can do it for everybody else too. Everybody can be saved. Everybody can be freed. Everybody can experience the power of God. Everyone can have abundant life. Jesus changes everything. No matter what you've done, no matter how unworthy you feel, he can change your life. He's still alive and working. Have you heard him call your name? No matter your past, who you were, what you've done, he's calling for you now.